Welcome to the Sunday night potluck. Somebody sent me a shirt. It says potluck is my spiritual gift. So I thought I'd wear it tonight. So happy Sunday to y'all. Glad to see some of you checking in. This is the no makeup edition of the Sunday night potluck. I've been on just out and about all day and getting a little bit of a late start here, but I thought I would go ahead and do it since I had to miss last week. So let's just get into the opening hymn, and hopefully it will be one that you recognize. Okay, here we go.
Blessed assurance. Now just the men, watching and waiting, looking above. Yes, sir. Filled with His goodness, lost in His love. Now everybody join us sing this.
All right. So who knows in the chat who wrote that old hymn? Little pop quiz. Does anybody know who wrote that hymn? If you do, put it in the chat. It's from, I'll give you a little hint here. It's from the 1800s. So it's kind of old, kind of later 1800s revival type hymn. Imagine how amazing it will be to join with all the believers in worship in heaven. Hopefully we'll all be knowing the songs. Somehow I think we will. It just kind of blows my mind, like all the languages and the songs and the genres, and somehow we're all going to be there praising him. Okay, Ashley got the first correct answer, which is Fanny Crosby. Now, Fanny Crosby was a composer of hymns. According to legend, she wrote like 6,000 hymns, which to me feels like she'd be writing more than one a day. I don't know. But she was also blind. If you didn't know that, go look up the story of Fanny Crosby, the hymn writer. All right, let's get into it. So, I don't know. I talked to my good friend yesterday. We went out for coffee together, and I told her what the potluck topic was going to be today. And I said, okay, tell me if you think that this is going to be a catastrophe. Like, you got to tell me, be my friend right now and tell me if this is just a very, very bad idea. And so I kind of walked her through the major movements of what I wanted to accomplish today. She's like, I think you should be in the risk and do it. So we'll see. We'll see if the internet loses their mind. But I'm going to try to talk about the Lindsay Clancy case, the woman in Massachusetts who unalived her 3 young children. Now, I want to tell you, like, this is going to be a difficult topic. Some of you should probably click to the next topic if you're watching this on the replay on the Monday morning leftovers. You should probably click through the next topic if you have, you know, so start experiencing strong emotions as we're talking about this topic. I want you to take care of yourself. And for some people, this might not, just because of the nature of the trial, it might be too much for some people. So I'm not going to give a bunch of gory graphic details. I just want to share some more general thoughts on the issue from my unique perspective and some things that I've been through. So it's really hard to have this kind of conversation as I was sitting down trying to put together my notes. And I was like, I'm going to have 300 caveats at the beginning to even start the conversation. And I don't want to do that. But I'm going to have a few. Okay. So if you or your child are on some kind of medication, psychiatric medication, under psychiatric care, like, this is not medical advice, consult your doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. All of that. Like, do what you got to do to be stable and safe. Okay. That's my first caveat. And if you think that any of this is distressful or triggering, just again, use the links in the description to skip ahead to the next topic. And the other thing I want to say is I'm not sad fishing here. I'm going to say some things tonight that I don't really talk about in public. I think I've only done one show in all my years of ministry. Actually, I've done 2 shows on this topic. One of them was 14 or 12 years ago. The other one was about 4 years ago. And neither of them are on my channel. They're on other people's channels. So this is not some sort of engagement farming scheme. I do want to share some things from my experience and my life story, because I think it has direct bearing on some important theological issues and something that's happening in the news right now. And I want to help people think about it and ask some questions. I'm not saying I'm an expert. Again, I'm only sharing from my personal experience and just trying to help people ask better questions. So the facts of the case, there's basically 2 facts. 3 children were murdered, and 2 parents have lost their children. Like, these are the basic facts of the case. I think the big picture of what was established in the trial is that all the evidence is pointing to the mother appears to have unalived her children with malice and forethought. That's what the jury will decide. The mother also seems to, I'm going to take things at face value. I'm going to assume she's not faking or a drama queen. This woman seems to have potentially multiple mental illnesses. We're going to call it, for lack of a better word, although I'm rethinking that term now. But she was under professional care from doctors, and she possibly needs an exorcism. And we'll talk more about that later. And I think another kind of thing that seems clear in the trial is that our healthcare system, when it comes to helping people who are in this state, is extremely broken. Like, I think that's not an overstatement to say that. And there's just a lot of things that went wrong. And so this is a problem. This is not just like a one problem thing. This is a situation that resulted from multiple problems over time. And so what I'm going to be speaking to tonight is just a couple of aspects of it based on my personal experience. And I'm not covering the whole case. And so I just want to speak about a couple of things in particular. But I think that the big picture of what I want to say is that the public conversation we're having right now is what I'm going to call personal agency. And what is the role of personal agency and responsibility within the context of these kinds of diagnoses? Okay. In this case, we're talking about what her psychiatrist on the stand was calling postpartum psychosis, which is a little bit different and more extreme than postpartum depression. Okay. So, but it has had this interesting galvanizing effect among some women in our culture that feel like every woman who's experienced depression or um, some kind of diagnosis or struggled with postpartum depression, like Lindsay Clancy is all of us, every woman who's had a baby and struggled. And I'm like, I'm not sure that that's true. And but there is this kind of I'm gonna just show you this video now that's gone viral. Um, it of these women standing outside the courthouse and all in support, and there's these viral videos now of women holding their children and saying, how they want to harm their children. It's weird. This is just super weird and destructive and not normal. And I'm concerned. Like, if there are really this many women who want to harm their children as are making these videos, like, I have other questions. But I, I'm not sure. One of the things I'm not sure about is if there would be this much energy if we were talking about a man, if the defendant was a man. um, and it makes me ask some questions about, is the energy here because she's a woman? Now, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, and it's an idea to try on. I'm not going to die for this idea, but this idea that, have we reached a point in our society where women have become so desensitized to killing or unaliving their unborn children that now we think that, there's circumstances that would warrant unaliving born children? Like, I have a lot of questions about a society that is making these videos and you know doing these kinds of things, because I'm old enough to remember a woman named Susan Smith. And if you don't remember who Susan Smith is, go Google her. It's almost like a near duplicate of this story, and that situation happened 30 years ago. And she unalived her two young boys and was put through a jury trial. And I'm going to tell you, the country could not be done with her quick enough. Like, we all knew it was evil, it was unnatural, and that she needed to go somewhere. Like, society needed to be protected from Susan Smith. And to watch this unfold is such an interesting thing for me at my age, to see how we have lost some kind of moral compass when it comes to agency. And I'm disturbed by this, truly. And so I think that there's this kind of growing groupthink that what we call mental illness, in many cases. Now, I think the psychosis part of it is a little different, and I'm going to get into the psychosis part of it. But let's just talk about garden variety anxiety and garden variety depression and garden variety, diagnoses, and all of these diagnoses that are out there now. That somehow that diminishes personal agency and moral responsibility. Like, this is peculiar to me, on that level. And there's even like, um, on X, and I know that most normal healthy people are not on X, but which I commend you for. But this is really turning into almost like a litmus test for dating, of what do you think, what side are you on with the Lindsay Clancy trial? And so I'm seeing things like this.
My new vetting process for if I want to date a man, first date question I'm always going to be asking him is, do you think that Lindsay Clancy should go to jail for what she did? And if that man says yes, I'm getting up and walking out right then and there. I cannot spend the rest of my life with someone who thinks that that woman is guilty and deserves jail.
Whoa. Like, and there's some screen caps going around on X of a guy breaking up with his girlfriend on a text message, kind of doing the opposite thing, because he's like, you scare me. I don't know if I want you to be the potential mother of my children if you believe that this woman is not morally culpable. And like, this is some weird things that are happening in our culture. And I don't think social media is helping. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. And there's also this other like side narrative that like the husband's acting weird and maybe he's guilty. And like there's women who believe this. And I'm like, look, if that was a strategy, if there was some evidence for that, I'm sure the defense would be bringing it in. But from my understanding, like their defense was like one day, like they didn't bring in any of that evidence that maybe it was the husband. So like we've got to stop with the online Nancy Drew people. You need to get off social media. You need to unhook from Candace Owens and, go outside in the real world and take your kids to the library and start reading some bedtime stories to them. Like you got to get in the real world, learn how to bake bread, like do some other things, because like this is not normal behavior. Okay. So that's just a little bit of the general setup of what's happening in the culture. So here's a key operating assumption that I have in my life. There's nothing new under the sun. What our society has come to call mental illness as a term is really just the modern name for something that we need to assign an insurance code to. Like it used to be that we knew, like, all right, these are people who have lost their grip on reality. Now we call them, maybe schizophrenics, or, we knew who the extreme cases were, the psychotic people, the sociopaths. Like we know what we used to know 100 years ago, like we know who those people are. But now with the proliferation of these diagnoses, it's like 1 in 6 or something Americans are on psychotropic drugs. And there are just a proliferation of mental illnesses. And so I do somewhat believe that what we call mental illness is being overdiagnosed. Now, that's not to say that I don't believe in legitimate problems. Like, I think that, there are things that are legitimate issues. Schizophrenia is a genuine problem. There are genuine problems, but when you have like this proliferation of these issues and everything has a diagnosis and a label and an insurance code, and it unlocks funding and it unlocks reimbursements for doctors, like we have to, on some level, acknowledge the incentivization for the money. Like, can we just acknowledge the system? Like, can we just look at it and try to say, like, I'm not sure this is healthy. Okay, so this is one of my operating assumptions in life is that there is nothing new under the sun. So whatever we are calling mental illness now is not new. It's just something with a label and an insurance code now. None of this is unknown to the world of the Bible. Okay, like we just call it the things, but it's not like, oh, there's more people who are mentally ill or that these problems didn't exist. Now, maybe they weren't talked about as much and people weren't making content that they could make money off of, in the public square. But these are not new problems. Okay. But we had a way of knowing like who the problem people are, what the problems were, and we had some ways of dealing with them. But now we're in an era where when you get a diagnosis, you go to a room or you're even maybe on a telehealth appointment on Zoom and you talk to a doctor of some kind and they ask you some questions. And if you answer yes to maybe 6 out of 10 of these questions, and you've had sustained symptoms for 2 or more months, then you can literally get a diagnosis. This is a highly subjective process based on the inner perceptions of the person who's struggling. There's no blood tests, there's no brain scans that are part of the diagnosis, and yet we call it an illness, mental illness. And so, like, even the nomenclature is a little confusing. Now, occasionally they will get data from loved ones or teachers or something like that, but not all the time. And what happens more often than not is that the person who's struggling gives some self-perception, reports some self-perceptions to a doctor or some kind of professional, and they go through this checklist, and then you get a diagnosis. How do I know this? I've lived that life. So I had bipolar disorder for 30 years. Now, again, this isn't something that I haven't built my whole ministry on this. I'm a theologian. But being in the mental illness machine has been part of my life. When I was 15 years old, I started what I see now as manifesting symptoms of bipolar disorder. And I think that for 20 years, I was not medicated. I just managed it different ways. I didn't know that that's what I had. I just thought I had a hard life. I thought I had a weird inner thought world, and I was just very unusual. And I struggled. I struggled a lot. Most of my friends in my life these days have known me for 30 years or more. Some of them 40 years. They knew me then. They saw me struggle. Okay. Now, in 2005, I finally got a quote unquote diagnosis. And if I talked to an official, I started going to counseling. And after about 6 months, my counselor said, "Hey, I think you should go see a psychiatrist. I think you have depression, and you could get medication." So I went to the psychiatrist. He sat there with me for about a half hour. He asked me a bunch of questions. And at the end of the session, he gave me a diagnosis, and I had an insurance code, and I had medication. And so when I hear in this trial with Lindsay Clancy about how many psychiatric medications she was on, I mean, this seems so plausible to me. as a person who has, again, been in that medical machine. So just some of the things she was on antidepressants, multiple different antidepressants at different times, Zoloft, Prozac, trazodone. She was on anti-anxiety medications and benzodiazepines, Lozapram, which is Ativan. I took that at one time. Clonazepam or Clonopin. I've tried that. Valium sleep aids, which included Ambien, antipsychotic medication, which was Seroquel, mood stabilizer, Lamictal. I've been on Lamictal. And she was also on Benadryl. Okay. So she's got like a pharmacy. and, but the thing is that going to all the doctors that she went to, like, we can talk about the brokenness of the medical establishment and some of my questions, which may or may not be interesting to you, about my thoughts of living through the psychiatric medical machine. But in all of that, when you're filling those prescriptions, like, there's still a level of agency that you have all along the way. And to this woman's credit, like, she did not take all of these pills. They brought a bunch of bottles into the courtroom. Some of them, she'd only taken a few of the pills. And I've been in that situation where I've gotten a prescription and then I was like, oh, wow, this is really making me sick. I can't tolerate this. I can't tolerate the side effects. So then I only take like 4 or 5 pills and then I stop. And back in the 2010s, I was on some of these psychiatric drugs that this woman, Lindsay Clancy, was on. And I've seen my fair share of psychologists and psychiatrists for treatment. So I have a little bit of lived experience with these issues. And I can totally envision how this happened. That she was on this many medications and she had all of these doctors and all of this. Now, I will say a quick aside here that the Lord healed me from bipolar disorder back in 2014. That's a different story. That's not this story. But like I said, I did live with this for likely 30 years, but 20 of that was undiagnosed. I'm just looking back on the symptoms and thinking about when I started experiencing the symptoms more intensely. But like, there was a short time when I took a drug called Lexapro. And Lexapro is an antidepressant, I believe, but I think it also has like an off-label use for other things. And they can give it for like panic disorders and OCD. And they even give, like, pediatric psychiatrists will prescribe Lexapro, according to the research that I did yesterday. And of all of the medications that I took over the years, this was the one where I started experiencing messages of wanting to harm my children. And I was scared. Like, I had been on a lot of psychotropic drugs, but I had never experienced those messages before. And I remember calling my psychiatrist and telling him, after I'd been on the medication for a week or so, maybe a little longer, but not much. And I reported to him, like, hey, I'm having these messages. And my psychiatrist's advice to me was, try to endure it for 6 more weeks and see if your body will adjust. I was sort of horrified. I had to tell him, I said, I cannot obey that. I will be in jail. And I just said, I need a different medication. I need a different game plan. And those messages were strong, but I still had agency. I was still able to notice, like, hey, this is wrong. Something's wrong here. I need to go talk to my doctor and get a different game plan going. And what you don't want to do when you're on these medications is think that the pills are a cure for the problem. The pills are not a substitute for agency or personal responsibility. You still have to do the hard work of going to therapy and trying to get to the bottom of like what the pains are in your soul, the woundedness in your soul that is complicating this. The pills help, in my experience, provide stability. They helped me, but I still had to go to therapy each and every week, sometimes twice a week, in order to work through the wounds in my soul. And I made meaningful progress in therapy. And I made a level of progress, and I wouldn't say I was like completely returned to normalcy, but my life got better. And as I engaged and walked on a road of healing, the psychotropic drugs were like a support system. They were not the treatment. Going to therapy and working through the things that had been wounds in my soul is what truly helped me get better. The pills were just a support system, if you will. And so I think that what a mistake that a lot of people make is they think that taking the pills is like, that's the treatment. That's the whole thing. This will fix my problems. You still have to do the heavy lifting of trying to explore how you got into this in the first place. Now, there is some unknowns of even how some of these drugs work or what they do. And in some cases, the drugs actually make the condition worse. So what happened for me was I took a particular drug. I'm not going to name it here, but I took a particular drug. And after being on it for 9 months, I actually got much worse and had, because in the beginning it seemed like it was helping. And then after 9 months, I had an episode where it was bad. And then I ended up being hospitalized for 3 months. And that what is often not talked about is that these drugs can actually have, in some cases, an effect on the patient that actually worsens the symptoms or introduces new problems. And I don't think a lot of people know how these drugs all work. And so it's complicated, and people have to really learn how to advocate for themselves of like, hey, is this helping? Like I said, once I found a good combination for me, it did help. It did bring stability to my life. My life improved. But at the same time, I was working very, very hard in therapy because I wanted to be a good mom, or as good of a mom as I could be to my children. And I wanted to provide a stable life with my husband. It was hard. I had a lot of struggles. So I'm not here to say like all medication is bad. Like for me, I experienced some good fruit from it, but I really had to learn how to be very and use my agency to advocate for myself and to notice and report when things were not working well for me. But a big part of my concern right now is that we're having this national conversation that seems to want to separate or divide the experiences in most mental illnesses from personal agency. And again, I think about men, like, because it seems like we're only having this conversation mostly about women. And if the defendant was a man, I'm not sure it would share this kind of energy. And surely we don't mean to say that women are just uniquely more weak or gullible or vulnerable to these issues. I don't know. Like, we, where are the feminists? Like, we're always saying, like, hey, we're strong, powerful women. But yet, on the other hand, we're kind of saying, but we're uniquely vulnerable to these things. I don't know. But I can relate to a reality of, as a person who experienced nearly daily thoughts of harming myself for 30 years. Every once in a while, I would have a day when that didn't happen. But for the most part, I lived a life all the way through seminary, graduate school, my early years of marriage, my early years of motherhood. Every single day, I woke up with those thoughts. And if I had to quantify it, I would say I had probably like 100 thoughts a day. It was hard, it was exhausting, but I still had agency. And I did things. Like, one of the reasons I enjoyed seminary so much is it brought order to my thoughts. Studying the attributes of God brought order to my thoughts. Studying the laws of logic brought order to my thoughts. And so while my inner world was chaotic at times and my emotions were chaotic, I did things in my life to build structures to bring order and clarity as I was going to therapy, as I was taking medication, as I was doing these things. I resisted those inner thoughts and I got help. Now, there were moments when I literally thought I was going to lose my mind. I have a lot of lived experience of being in that situation. I am not speaking from a posture of hypothesis or theory. Like, I'm not just some egghead out here telling you, like, here's my psychiatric model for all of that. I'm not talking about it from that point of view in this context. I'm telling you, like, this is the life that I lived. And it was hard. It was very, very hard. And I did my best. And I did not always show up for my life very well. I made life very complicated for other people. I wasn't always the easiest person to get along with at work. I wasn't always the easiest person to get along with in my home. I struggled socially. I did not make friends easily. I had a lot of struggles. Now, again, thankfully, glory be to God, on November the 7th, 2014, he healed me from bipolar disorder. That was the last day I took medication. And anybody who knows me, like I said, most of my friends have known me for 30 years or more. I've been married to the same man for 33 and a half years. Like, I have lived a lot of life. And they can tell you that I am not the same person that I was. And so I know that my case is highly anomalous. Many people have a cross to bear when it comes to this issue. And I have sympathy for that. And I want to encourage you to pray for those people in your life. But what we cannot do is take away agency. There are decisions that the person who struggles with a certain mental illness, quote unquote, they can make decisions that can make that go better for them or worse for them. They can still opt into situations of making a meaningful contribution to society and their families and working on themselves. And to be honest, in some cases, like working and cooperating with the Holy Spirit, and cultivating the fruit of the Spirit in their lives, and not just cultivating the works of the flesh, Galatians 5. Like, there is things that you can do. You still have agency and personal responsibility. Again, I'm going to take you back to my primary assumption is that there's nothing new under the sun. Whatever these issues are, they are not new. They just have names and insurance codes now. These things are not new. Trauma's not new. It just has a name. Depression's not new. It just has a name. Okay? So whatever we are up against in life, it is not uncommon to the history of humanity. I'm hoping I'm making sense here. So the fact that I experienced very difficult thoughts about myself, I'm going to call them that. I already said earlier what they really were specifically. But I don't want this stream to have problems with the algorithm, so I'm not going to keep using those words. But because I experienced those thoughts nearly every day of my life for 30 years, I understand. I understand the hardship, but you still have agency. I still had agency, and use whatever that agency is to go in a positive direction to work on yourself if you are struggling with these things. Now, Lindsay is reporting, she reported to both her psychiatrist and her husband that she was hearing a quote unquote male voice telling her to harm her children, unalive her children. Ooh, when I heard that, I was like, okay, that's the psychosis part of it. That's the name and the insurance code for what she's experienced. That is the psychosis, the psychotic episode, if you will. I'm going to tell you from a Christian standpoint, I have a different name for that. You might need a priest. You might need an exorcism. But even then, I would say there was agency. Like the cases of true demonic possession are rare. In most cases, like the man at the tombs in the Gospel of Mark, like that's the rare case. But people can be significantly demonized and still have agency. And I'm concerned about a culture that wants to completely divorce agency from these states of mind. Now, psychosis, I will grant you, like it is hard. It is hard. I have been there. But when I got there, I told someone, I told my therapist, I went to the psychiatric hospital. I was there. And I believe that Miss Clancy did the same thing. She had been in the behavioral hospital, but all of these medications were not helping her. And I think that it's just a really sad and complicated situation. And I think that if this, I'm taking it at face value. I'm going to take her reports at face value that she's telling the truth in the way she's describing things, and that she heard this voice. Okay. Now her husband did everything. I think he took many reasonable steps to try to support her. He hired a nanny to come in and help with the baby a couple days a week. He helped. He had the older kids in daycare a few days a week. He worked from home to try to support her. She had her parents and his parents and a whole network of mental health professionals. And so this was not a situation where he was just totally abandoning her. Like, based on his testimony in court, he took reasonable measures that a husband would take to try to support his wife in this situation. They got her to the hospital. They got her the medications. I mean, and this is where the thing that I said at the top is like our system of how we treat mental illness. We just have to admit, like sometimes you just have to step back and look at something and just admit, like this is a mess. This isn't working. And if you are in a family that has somebody that has like a profound problem, like you're dealing with profound bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or these more extreme types of cases, like how broken it the system truly is. um but my concern too is that we have such a trend now of moving so far away from family and being even and kind of making choices that lead to even more isolation. My grandparents didn't have that problem. So like when I think about my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my grandparents were living in a very rural part of North Dakota. They were living in a soddy. Now, if you've ever seen the very old Little House on the Prairie, like one of the first episodes, they're living in a soddy. It's basically a house on the side of a hill with a dirt floor. Okay. This is not a sanitary condition. All right. And my grandmother was probably growing her own food and canning and didn't have a refrigerator. And that is where they got married and started a family and had their first child. They were living in a soddy. Okay. This wasn't even 100 years ago. All right. This was probably like 85 to 90 years ago when they had their first child. If we think that we got problems with postpartum depression now, like this is where we need to have like a little bit of perspective about ourselves. Like if you're an upper class person and you're like there's nothing new under the sun. Our grandparents and great grandparents also faced many challenges, and they didn't have half the medical things that we do or a support system or medications, but they did usually have family nearby, older women in the family who could tell the younger women, hey, I see you're struggling with this, let's get together, let's help each other. But we live in such a transient culture now, and these pills will not fix that. These pills will not fix your broken soul. Okay? Part of the problem here is that we are confusing the terms and using medical terms to talk about wounds of the soul. Like, can you see the confusion there? We have done some complicated things, and we are in a situation where there are thousands of women on the internet talking like they want to harm their children and posting it on the internet. And I'm thinking these women need Jesus and they need their family and they need to be surrounded by family and they need to be told like, this is not new or weird or strange. And I'm concerned about a society that thinks that pills are the solution. Like we're talking about soul wounds, and this is how we get here. So I think that we need to have some perspective. As I age, I think more and more about my grandparents and the life that they had and how they overcame so much with so little, and so much of it was just through the hard work of their soul development. We don't have that. We have such affluence. And we think that we have a hard time. We don't have a tenth of the hard time that our grandparents did. So I don't know. These are all of my things that are floating in my mind are related to this. But at the end of the day, I say, let the courts decide. Let them hear the evidence under the law, under the instructions of the judge. I really want to encourage you, if you're playing internet Nancy Drew, you need to stop. You need to get some perspective. Let them decide the case under the law. And if the husband was the problem, the defense will bring that out as a strategy. But we've got to stop. So all of this has raised for me a number of I don't know, questions is the right word, but concerns for young women. And the trial has prompted a lot of commentary on X this week that young women are in trouble. Like, there is a concern for young women. Like, I think we've talked some on various shows about the issues facing men, but maybe we need to start talking on some shows about issues facing women because I think that young women they seem very confused. And I wanted to show you this graph that was making the rounds this week on X. Let me see if I can pull it up. There we go. The number of unmarried men is surging. And so it's like 2 to 1 from the year 2000, where unmarried and married were like pretty close together. But unmarried has now skyrocketed, and married men is shrinking. And this is men who are in the ages 20 to 39 category. And this is interesting because the question is why? Why are there so many young men who are not getting married? Now, I think that this is a complicated answer, probably with a lot of different possible answers. I mean, we could talk about corn, we could talk about hookup culture, all of that. But I think that one of those factors is that there are some young men who feel scared of marrying women who think that Lindsay Clancy is that what she did is not a problem. Like, I think that like I played that video earlier of a woman saying, on my first date, I'm going to ask, like, where does the man stand? Well, there's men on X saying the same thing. I'm going to ask, so I don't know if I want this woman to be the father of my children. And there is kind of this concern among some young men of, like, the women these days that are my age, they seem kind of crazy. And I don't know if I want that kind of woman to be the mother to my children. There was a post this week by Tommy Lauren, who is a conservative commentator. She said, making fun of girl bosses and telling women they shouldn't value their careers too much make for some fun podcast banter, but it's alienating and pissing off a lot of otherwise conservative women. Just thought you should know. Well, this triggered a whole thing where a lot of people were like, oh, I got some thoughts about that. So here's my friend, Megan Basham. If we don't start talking about women valuing careers over marriage and family, it's not going to matter if we win elections or not. Women choosing jobs over babies will destroy civilization eventually, regardless of whether they vote for Republicans. You cannot conserve a nation without conserving families. That's a very interesting take. Here is what my friend Katie Faust had to say. Says, I actually agree with her, especially on apps like X, which are rightly designed to savage bad ideas. It's easy to come across as deriding girl bosses. Young men are finding their way. Young women are in crisis. And like every other subject, conservatives must be grounded in reality. The reality is that having a career can be fulfilling. Getting an education is rewarding. Young women are not wrong to want meaningful work or to use their talents in the world. But they have been lied to when they are told that work can replace marriage and children. We need to tell young women the whole truth. Marriage and family are more fulfilling and rewarding. You can have it all, motherhood and a career, but you can't have it all at once. This, just as a little sidebar, this is Krista, not Katie talking. This was the revelation that I came to around the age of 29 when I was in my third year of teaching. And I thought I was going to go have this great academic career. And I realized I can have a PhD or I can have children. I can't have them both at the same time. And I made a decision that I was going to embrace having children and a family, and that I would still be young enough to go finish my education once my children grew up. And that's what I did. Now, I never got a PhD. I got a doctor of ministry. It was a little different, not as hard, not as prestigious. But I did finish my education. I brought my education to a meaningful close in my mid-50s. And that's how long it took. But I realized the agency that I had at the age of 29, I cannot have both of these things. I can only have one, and one at a time. And I think that we do send confusing messages to our young people, and I think that we've got to get better about that. Prioritize marriage and motherhood early. I agree with all of this. If you wait until later, you will be working against both your body and a crowded 30-something dating pool. 100%. That's some great advice. Your career should not look like a man's career, linear and uninterrupted. Once you have children, you may be surprised by how much you want to stay home with them. I'm not the kind of woman who needs to be seen, but lots of women are. So validate them. They truly do have a lot to offer. A nonprofit, a school, a law firm, or a business. And as an employer, we hire a number of moms who are at home with their kids, homeschooling their kids. And some of them have small side hustles, some of them don't, but they bring great value because in a former career, they were this, that, and the third. And they bring that expertise to us now. So I get that. Show them, I think this is some great advice. Show them how to build a career around the children, not the reverse. Our civilization is in crisis largely because young women are in crisis. Mockery is not the pathway to correction. Modeling is. And that's part of what I've been trying to do here on the potluck each week is I've been sharing a little bit about my experience, what I've learned, mistakes I've made, and my life as I said a couple of months ago, that I didn't realize what a feminist I was. But that's really what I'm trying to do here. Another response to Tommy Lauren's post is Allie Beth, who I'm not going to say I'm friends with. I wish I were friends with her. I think she would know who I am. We'll call her a ministry acquaintance. She said, your wife probably shouldn't be on TikTok. This is some good advice, man. Try to get your wife off TikTok. Try to get yourself off TikTok. It's just not a healthy environment. I don't know how to say it any other way. I think that her follow-up tweet was this: people are having a hard time with this, so let me double down. TikTok is uniquely formatted to target women with addicting, negative, deceptive, enraging content. It's why the defend Lindsay Clancy thing has taken off. While there are exceptions, women probably should not be on it. I'm thankful to have a team that posts my podcast clips there. I do think it's important to present alternative views, and that I've never logged on to the app a day in my life. Me either. I just think like it is engagement farming for mental illness. Like I am highly, highly concerned. And I this is the scripture that came to my mind this week. If I could just share this, I know I'm over time. It's been a long conversation, and I'm realizing now there was one major piece of the Lindsay Clancy story that I didn't share. I forgot. So maybe I'll go back to it if you want me to, or I'll just sign off. Okay, so again, this is from 2 Timothy chapter 3. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. Now notice these descriptors. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. Don't follow them on TikTok. Don't watch their videos on YouTube. If this description fits those people, they are the kind who worm their ways into homes and gain control over gullible women. This is what Allie Beth is talking about when Jesus, husbands, your wives should probably not be on TikTok. They worm their way into homes and gain control over gullible women. That is a hard, hard word. Who are loaded down with sins and are swayed by all kinds of evil desires, always learning but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. They're always going to conferences. They're always listening to podcasts, but never coming to a knowledge of the truth. Just as Janus and James opposed Moses, so also these teachers oppose the truth. They are men of depraved minds who, as far as the faith is concerned, are rejected. They will not get very far because, as the case of those men, their folly will be clear to everyone. Unfortunately, we live in an age where the algorithm monetarily rewards the insanity. It rewards gossip and half-truths. And no longer is the gossip just something that you like look at in the check stand as it was when I was growing up, of like looking at the National Enquirer headlines and all the weird things of alien babies and movie star gossip. Now the gossip is on YouTube getting millions of views and is monetized. This is where we are. So here's my advice for young women. First of all, read the Bible every day. Read the Bible, read the Bible, read the Bible. Get on a Bible, get the Bible app, have it read to you. Do whatever you got to do to get on a reading plan, read the Bible. Ask the Lord to cultivate in you a desire for marriage to a godly man, a desire for children, and a desire for those things before a career, like higher levels of priority. Join a women's Bible study that includes older women. You might be the only 23-year-old in the room, and that's okay. Go join a good women's Bible study. Find one in your community. If your church doesn't have one, go find your friendly neighborhood Bible study fellowship. Do whatever you got to do to find a good Bible study and go join it. And don't worry about it if everyone's my age or above. That's to your advantage, actually. Build a friendship with a mature Christian woman. Spend time together, grab coffee, ask her questions. Because if you need some perspective, if your real mother is not in the area even better, if your mother's a godly woman, set up weekly Zoom calls. Start treating her like a friend. Ask her for wisdom. Ask her for ideas. And I think that you need to have some older godly women in your life. Go join a solid college group, singles group. If your church doesn't have one, go find one. Go find one where they study the Bible, and you'll have a chance of meeting a like-minded guy. Like, you can't just think that somebody's just going to magically show up. Like, you got to go be intentional. And the best place to do that, if you're in your 20s, go find a college group, go find a singles group. Choose a career that keeps your husband, your future husband and children in mind. Can it eventually be paused? Can it be done part-time from home? Can it be done on the weekends? Like, you're an ER nurse or something. Like, think ahead to not just right now, but what you want to build. Where do you want to go? Think about your career with that in mind. Get out of debt. Learn how to live on a budget. Stop buying designer clothes. Like, figure out your money. If you have a lot of student loan debt, make a plan that you're not carrying that into your marriage. Pay off your car note. Like, do the Dave Ramsey thing. Do what you have to do to get out of debt and start engaging in the mental discipline and the physical discipline of learning how to live on a budget. Step away from most social media. You have no idea how it's already distorted your perceptions of the world. Like, get off social media. Develop a hobby that your grandmother practiced. You can learn how to cook. If you don't know how to cook, that's one of my biggest regrets is I did not take initiative to teach myself how to cook. I could have made such a better home life for my family if I had done that. Big time regret. If you do not know how to cook and all you know how to do is DoorDash, start watching some YouTube videos. Fix yourself. Fix yourself. Start to learn how to cook. Learn how to bake. Learn how to sew. Learn how to knit. Start a garden. Bake some bread. Do something with your hands. We used to have basic skills as women. You want to bring value to your future marriage and your children. Do something now to prepare yourself. Lift weights. Another thing I regret not doing at a younger age. I just started doing this a couple of years ago. Care for your body. Dress modestly and attractively. Please stop wearing pajama bottoms in public. Please stop dressing like a guy. Please stop with the oversized clothes. Please learn how to dress yourself. This is something that I have struggled with. My biggest struggle in ministry is this issue right here. I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying to improve. So even at my big age, I can admit struggles. And I think that I did this much better as a young woman. But this is my advice. This is my advice to young women, and to be part of the problem or to be part of the solution, not just complaining about young people, but saying, here are some practical things where to aim. And I think that that is where I would encourage young women to start walking in and developing those habits. All right, I'm going to go back to something that I forgot to say earlier, and that is about this voice that this woman heard. And I kind of alluded to it, like she might need a priest. And I'm not being facetious. I think that one of the things, and this is going to be a controversial position, as if I had said enough controversial things tonight, but I think that one of the great omissions in the discussion, even among Christians, about mental illness is the possible role of the demonic. Now, that's not to say that every so-called quote unquote mental illness is caused by demons. I think that is the error that some people make. Everything's demons. I think some things are brain problems. Some things get accentuated by these drugs, and that in turn causes the brain problem. I think some of it is soul wounds. I think some of it is has a demonic component to it. And so when this woman says that she hears voices telling her to harm her children, or when I heard voices telling me to harm myself, I am not a naturalist. I am a Christian. I know demons are real. And ultimately, how I was healed was because people prayed against demons in my life that were habitually and on a daily basis speaking messages to me. Now, I don't know if these demons were inside or outside or just hanging around. I do not know. But what I know is that when those people prayed against those demons, I woke up the next morning for the first time in 30 years, and I did not have those thoughts. And I never had those thoughts again. So I know that it's a very controversial position to say that a Christian can have impacts or harassment from demons, whatever you want to say about it. But I think it's quite possible that Miss Clancy was hearing voices. Now, the psychological insurance code and name for that is a psychosis. The Christian looks at that and says, this might be demons. Maybe. If you go talk to your friendly neighborhood Catholic priest, Orthodox priest, classical Anglican priest, they have training where they can help you probe what's going on here. Is this a medical issue? Is this a soul wound? Is this, in fact, a demonic issue? Like, they can help you probe. They can help you look into it. But I think that we've got to have better conversations about these things. And this is a problem with a lot of components. This is a Rubik's Cube with 45 sides. And when I woke up that next morning and I did not have those thoughts, I knew something was different. My head was quieter. I didn't have all these voices screaming at me. And so this thing that I didn't even believe in, I didn't think Christians could have that level of demonic harassment. This thing that I thought I didn't believe in, somebody prayed a prayer on my behalf, and my life was different after that. And my life has been different every day since then. And I am a walking, talking miracle. And so I have a lot of sympathy for people that are in the struggle. And like I said, I know I'm a highly anomalous case. Some people have a heavy cross to bear. But I think that I don't know what these medications, what all of them do. I don't know what they all did for me. I don't know what role the demonic realm played in my journey completely. It had some role. And I don't know if it was a combination of soul wounds and the medicine and the demons. I don't know. There's a lot of things I do not know about it. But what I do know is that God provided a supernatural interruption. And I'm grateful. I am very, very grateful. But I just think we've got to have better, less reactive conversations about these things. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful. Please let me know if you're watching the replay in the comments, what your thoughts are. And I would love to hear from you on, like I said, this is not an exhaustively complete conversation on these issues, just some thoughts that I kind of pieced together and took some notes about throughout the whole week. So I hope you have a good week, and God willing, we'll be here next week for the potluck. We'll see you later. God bless, grace and peace.